Hello everyone, this is Dark Journalist with a special presentation of new Part 2 interviews with John Warner IV and Dr. Joseph Farrell on the CIA UFO threat op. Please join us now. Age of Disclosure is coming out. Mellon's right in the heart of it. He's been pushing hard. He's been engaged in all these things. He's publicly spoken against you in public. I want to give you the same chance to just respond, honestly.
Well, I was very disappointed in him. He became very petty and low on a public forum. It was a private forum, but you're on it and others. Really?
Yeah.
That's the level of maturity when the human race is really at the precipice, you know, and all this stuff, you know, I won't bore your audience, but it was very low and petty and personal. And if that's all you've got, wow. You need help. Chris has got multiple screws loose.
Yeah.
That's not good. You know, for a guy who's, you know, wielding his weight around. You know, if I had a message for him, I'd say, think of the American people first. Forget me, forget everyone in the disclosure movement, forget Greer, you know, you naughty fake journalist, you, Daniel, you know, that he calls you. You know, forget all that. Keep your mind on the American people and what they deserve. They deserve the truth. Who they are, where they came from, what's going on, who's in charge, what our technology level is, thousands of years advanced, more advanced than the public sector. Everyone says 500. 500, they've got a clear cube with a tiny microscopic bubble of antimatter in it that can power anything.
Wow.
Come on. We're using other people's technology we reverse engineered or we have received as gifts, trade items.
Incredible.
That is tens of thousands of years ahead of the public sector. We're burning oil in our cars. It's silly. You know, think of the American people and not protecting corporations and, you know, getting janky, dumb Congress people involved. You know, it's a terrible operation. Their operation it's deceitful, it's low, and it has no redeeming value because you're messing with people's minds.
Right. This is the Intel rollout of UFO disclosure just for you and I, and it's called Age of Disclosure. And it's brought to you by 33 different Intel agents. Dan Farrell is the director who put this all together, and he's Steven Spielberg's producer, but he shares another very unusual accolade in his CV, as it were, which is he's Lue Elizondo's agent.
No. Now, wait a minute. Just stop right there. Since when do whistleblowers have to have agents?
Agents, there we go.
I mean, come on, people.
This thing has already debuted at these theaters, is getting the posh treatment of like, oh, these CIA talking heads now are giving you the truth. The Age of Disclosure CIA documentary. And with all of the Intel talking heads, the Spielberg influence, and people like Marco Rubio in there. And Anna Paulina Luna, of course.
You know, Daniel, you and I have been around the ufology narrative for decades, and we've watched this build up towards disclosure wax and wane for decades. I mean, this goes back to Donald Kehoe and the 1950s. You know, I am intensely skeptical of anything coming out of Washington, D.C., claiming to come out of whistleblowers or people like that. These people are professional liars. They get paid to lie. So I would urge due caution, because this is a limited fallback position. Well, this is a defensive strategy and a counteroffensive to get rid of the independent alternative ufology community altogether.
Yes.
I do not think it's going to be successful.
So what they're trying to do now, after sitting on the technology for 80 years, is redirect it. So this breakaway group that's kept the breakaway technology, they're trying to break back in. And they're trying to say, they need a story though. says, yeah, we developed this advanced technology. We did it with your money. We didn't tell you about it. But don't worry, we were doing it because there's a UFO threat. And those billions that we're asking for to do this are to protect you. So that's the story that they need to put across. The leader of the group that's putting this across is Chris Mellon, who is the cousin of John Warner, I mentioned. And Warner, he said, well, you know, my cousin Chris Mellon, you know, he's part of this UFO threat operation that you've identified. And Mellon, you know, a number of the whistleblowers came back to me and said, yeah, I want to tell you about this, tell you about that, but I can't because Chris Mellon won't let me talk to you. And I started to realize, oh, Mellon's behind the whole thing. If you dig into Mellon's history, he's known as the mayor of Area 51. He oversaw the secrecy at the most secret facility for a decade. He's the one who's running UFO disclosure now. So I found a quote from digging through the records of his that says the following, and I'll put it up on the screen here. And I'll read the quote, but basically the thrust of it is this. There are no UFOs, the government isn't hiding anything, and there's no advanced technology program that the public doesn't know about. It's all completely a myth. That's Chris Mellon in 2016. In 2017, a New York Times story comes out, oh, there are UFOs. Chris Mellon is right in the heart of it. He promotes a group that's run by the CIA called TTSA, To the Stars Academy, and they recruit the rock star Tom DeLonge to be the front man for the whole thing. He goes out and says, yeah, there's UFOs, the government needs to give us the truth. All the people behind the company, the CEO, you know, the chief of operations and everything else, all career intel people. They're all career CIA people. In fact, that whole wave of UFO whistleblower disclosure that created these committees and this push for money in the UFO Defense Office comes directly from Chris Mellon, who is the mayor of Area 51. So that's not who you want running this. The other problem is Mellon is a billionaire DOD official trying to control UFO disclosure. And he's managing these whistleblowers. So these guys come out and they say, well, I saw this, I saw that, I'm coming forward to the government. And he says, this is what you're gonna do. Here's how we'll do it. And he created something called the UAP Defense Fund, which is basically going to be a large-scale slush fund for people to roll in money into this effort. So Mellon has squeezed that entire process. He's installed intel people around the whole disclosure community and the whole disclosure office. So if we don't smash the Mellon op, you don't get UFO disclosure, you get CIA, UFO threat, emergency powers, and all the rest of it. That's the corridor that this goes down. And Mellon was getting so frustrated at my efforts that when we shot a documentary that included him and I included this Grush story, he went crazy on social media and was like, that journalist, you know, he doesn't know and all the rest. He started to flip out and everyone was like, you know, this guy's usually cool, calm, and collected. The reason is because we struck at the very heart of what he's doing. And the other problem that he needed to make up for is that David Grush, who's the lead whistleblower in all this, in conversation with me, he reached out to me, you know, we had a normal conversation, and I talked to him and I said, look, just put this stuff on the record, come on the show. And he said, I can't do that, you don't understand. Chris Mellon won't let me come on your show because, and I'm afraid of the backlash. So Mellon completely controls that whole thing, because if he were a free whistleblower giving information to the public, he'd just come on the show and say, this is what I saw in those records when I was at the NGA, and I'm behind, you know, this disclosure happening. Instead, Chris Mellon, some weird billionaire DOD official who ran Area 51, is saying, you can't say anything, don't talk to him. So, you know, that's what's really going on. Now, Mellon is embedded in the UAP disclosure D-class. You know, that whole thing that they're gonna have at the hearing, the D-class is gonna include Mellon, Grush, Elizondo, all the counterintelligence people, as I mentioned. So you're either going to get one or two things. You'll get CIA false UFO threat disclosure, or you'll get the real thing. There is no middle ground. It's one or the other. And if you have a bunch of counterintelligence and agents running that committee, that's what you're going to get.
This is a weird curveball on this, but since you brought this up, I've been doing a great deal of study of Ronald Reagan and astrology.
Oh boy.
Reagan used astrologers all the way back to the 1950s.
There's a major flap when he's in the White House about Nancy and Joan Quigley and this whole network thing that she was attached to that would control almost every decision that Reagan was making. Reagan was such an advocate for astrology that he wanted it pinpointed the days where it was most likely that he was to be assassinated so he could, move the schedule around. But all of his major speeches, including the fact of his acceptance speech taking place later than it should have, all of these various pieces. And it's always been a weird myth in California, a strange legend back there, an urban legend, but it's true, that Reagan was supposed to give his acceptance speech as governor for the second term that he won, and it was supposed to happen at 8 p.m., but the astrologer told him, no, it has to be 1 a.m., and he did it at 1 a.m., which is one of the weirdest things you could do. But Reagan being guided by this and the whole thing about, in the background, all of the mystery schools talking about the pole shift back there, Yeager Casey work talking about a pole shift, Steiner's work, Earth Changes, pole shift is in there. It's being fed out to the population through the mystery schools, through that esoteric line of information. So we get into the 21st century, these groups on the political side who are very married in, as it were, to the mystery schools, they know about this prediction inside. And so this whole piece about the pole shift, they're positioning themselves very well before this happens. Now, I was thinking about this a little bit differently and thinking about Reagan and his astrological piece and wondering how deep his network went on the astrology side. And if it is the astrology here that's guiding them on when these events will happen, which is why the predictions or some of the things that they've built up for has seemed to be slightly off because they're dialing it down closer and closer through astrological observation. What do you think the odds are that that's what we're looking at?
Oh, I think they're quite high. They're quite high. The reason being that if you and I can think of it, they already have, to put it simplistically.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
But more importantly, I go back to that talk I did at the 2014 Secret Space Program conference out in San Mateo.
Right.
Because my whole first presentation was about the deep state making political calculation about how to avoid another Tower of Babel moment. In other words, how do we avoid another massive intervention in human history like that? So that idea carries with it the implication that they are fully aware of those ancient stories, number one. And by aware of them, I'm not saying just the biblical version of them. They're aware of all of those ancient stories. Remember, Robert Oppenheimer is citing the Mahabharata at the Trinity test, So in other words,
Destroyer of worlds.
Destroyer of worlds. So they are very familiar with the vast body of ancient lore, Christian, Vedic, Buddhist, and so on. And all of that lore tells them essentially the same story, although from different points of view. So they're taking those texts in their consideration, but that means secondly, they're taking those texts and traditions seriously.
Right.
Okay. It is an inevitable part of that whole body of literature that particularly someone like Oppenheimer, and the circle of people around him are going to be familiar with. I'm thinking of Luis Alvarez, for example, or Farouk Labaz, the NASA, the Egyptian guy at NASA that was scheduling the landing sites on the moon. The guy's from Egypt. Okay. So in other words, you've got,
and with Alvarez, you're opening up a gigantic Pandora's box.
Huge can of box. Yeah, huge Pandora's box.
He's got the pyramid connection.
He's got the pyramid connect. It's all there, folks.
He's got the JFK assassination.
He's got the JFK assassination.
He's the one who says, no, his head is going forward.
Yeah, right. He's got the, they're all in there, folks. But anyway, yeah, you're dealing with people that take these things very seriously. So you're also dealing with people that would know what those ancient traditions are about astrology.
Oh, yes.
And Reagan following these ideas doesn't surprise me, because ancient astrology was all about what a modern astrologer would call the mundane horoscope. The mundane horoscope is not the personal little horoscope thing that you read in the paper or pick up in the little sun sign brochures in the grocery store aisle. That wasn't ancient astrology at all. Ancient astrology was casting horoscopes for a king or a ruler. Absolutely. And the reason why is that the king represented a statistical aggregate group of people. And when you look at what the ancient records say about astrology, they will tell you that these things were built up based on observations taken over tens of thousands of years. That's right out of Wallace Budge's Egyptian amulets and so on. That whole citation is in that book. Well, if you take that statement seriously, what is the statement telling you? Number one, is based on observation. That observation was a statistical observation of groups of people taken over, here it comes, thousands of years.
Wow.
So it's telling you this is all coming somewhere out of an empirical science.
Yes.
That is long lost to us. Now, someone like Ronald Reagan, who let's put his astrological interest in a much wider context, because there is a case to be made that Ronald Reagan, as governor of California, deliberately allowed the state itself to be turned into a laboratory for social experimentation.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely, he did. You get that whole MK Ultra, CIA, social engineering thing going big time when he's governor of California. So, but you get all of this going. So it doesn't surprise me that someone like that is going to have an interest in that kind of astrology and follow it very rigorously. And that tells me that the people he has around him, the astrologers that he's using, may have been very carefully vetted, not only by him, but by the security apparatus, the deep state around.
Yes, indeed.
Wow,
that is fascinating.
Remember William Bryan, the psychiatrist, William Bryan, that many people suspect was involved with Sirhan Sirhan, or for that matter, Jolly. These are all California psychiatrists. Incidentally, William Bryan, the psychiatrist, is the great-grandson of William Jennings Bryan.
And so the political legacy coming in there, resurfacing, and he himself went off at the end of his life there, just 10 years after the Sirhan incident, bragging to prostitutes about what he had done there in Las Vegas and showing up in a hotel dead. Very unusual guy for a number of reasons, but there were a couple of things off the cuff interviews. And I have one of them. I put it in a documentary. What you're getting at, though, is very interesting, because they're the big time innovators in the Reagan period in California. You're opening up the entire thing around the hippies, that whole piece that we get, and all of the experimentation with the hippies and Haight-Ashbury and all the rest. And Reagan is there as the kind of conservative contrast to all that. But in the meantime, he's like, well, look, in order, I'm going to give these guys license to do all these things in order to restore order and figure out all of these various things. The heart of it right there in California.
Yeah, and let's not forget Laurel Canyon and that whole CIA rock music connection. It's California literally became the test bed. So what we're seeing in California now is the result of all those policies that go way, way back, and that should give people pause. Do we want anyone from that state running the country? I don't care what political party they're from. My answer.
You mean you don't think Gavin Newsom can do the job?
I don't. Gavin Newsom, no. Nancy Pelosi, no. Dianne Feinstein, no. Jim Jones, no. The old
maybe Arnold can change the Constitution and
Arnold, no. Again, I don't care what party they're from. I don't want anybody from that whacked out, nutty, drug addicted state running the country.
He'll be back. It's a shame because it is the most. It's the most beautiful,
It is a beautiful state geographically, but spiritually, it's sick up to the earlobes.
Incredible.
It's so sick. I don't want anybody coming from that state anywhere near the levers of power at a federal level.
You had Richard Nixon and Reagan. Come on,
Nixon. I mean, this should tell people everything they need to know. Ronald Reagan, Richard Nixon, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, Gavin Newsom. Come on, folks. Arnold Schwarzenegger.
There is basically, a pretty
Governor
hardcore.
Moonbeam. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. There's a hardcore Linda Ronstadt's boyfriend. There's a very hardcore dot connecting there, though, which is that there are power shifts. And the power shifts of FDR in New York, in some sense, the Trump New York power shift, it also comes out of this block. Yes. And then California, of course, Nixon, Reagan, that whole piece. And it swings back and forth over and over again.
It swings back and forth. And you can kind of tell the Trump-Reagan parallel to me, Daniel, is very palpable because with this second Trump administration, I think a very similar type of deal was struck with Trump that they made with Reagan. They're essentially letting Trump have his social cultural agenda, which I think he's done quite well on. Just so long as they get to run the financial and foreign policy. And if you look at that aspect of the Trump administration, Palantir, this so-called sovereign wealth fund that's going to have lots of kleptocurrency, as I like to call it, in the sovereign wealth fund. Let's exchange the hard assets of the country for electronic computer blips. That's that's a plan.
We'll take Lake Michigan for some Bitcoin.
Yeah, we'll take Lake Michigan and all the interstate infrastructure, and you guys get computer blips. Isn't that going to be nice?
Wow.
So yeah, they're making the same deal with Donald Trump that they made with Ronald Reagan. You can have your domestic agenda. Just let us run intelligence and foreign policy.
Wow.
And then we get GHW Bush and that whole, what I think of the Bush family. So
they could be preparing Vance to be Bush, possible.
Vance is going to be an interesting to watch in this respect. I have just the feeling that he's not going to be entirely playing ball with them, although he's certainly acting like it now.
Interesting. Yeah. There's a big clash coming there with DeSantis and Vance and Rubio and that battle for taking Trump's, coattails in the end.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Alex Jones has been saying that it should be Bobby Kennedy who's running in 2028. I found this exceptional, and it's very interesting. Of course, I've met and talked to Bobby before. I had him on the show, and one of the things that I'm hearing is a buzz in the background.
May I interrupt you, Daniel?
Oh, yes.
Hang on to your thought. we know that we're living in a crazy upside down world if a Kennedy runs as a Republican.
Wow.
Can you imagine? My mind can't compute that.
You know? And yet it's happening in real time.
Yeah. It's like Eisenhower running as a socialist, you know.
The only thing I would say is I've been hearing in the background that Bobby is very, very unhappy with the thing that he developed as Maha, that the groups and the spokespeople, including his former vice president Shanahan, has been going after him and labeling him Judas and all these other things. When in fact, in just a short period of 9 months, he's managed to turn around the Health and Human Services Agency dramatically. So that's fascinating, though, that those groups could be so, vested inside of that system, and he's still able to make change and to throw off the influence of the pharmaceutical companies. But it's not good enough for some of the hardcore Maha crowd.
We talked about this before the recording, Daniel, and I am absolutely at a loss to understand why people think that in a mere 9 months, one man, no matter how powerful or charismatic they may be, can overturn a bureaucracy and a policy-making attitude inside that bureaucracy that has been in place for decades and that has been so hollowed out by those very corporate pharmaceutical interests. I mean, for crying out loud, people, cut the man some slack and give him a chance to do what he wants to do.
Right.
9 months, give me a break.
I mean, that's turning a massive aircraft carrier around.
Bingo. And besides that, when was the last time that we had any Secretary of Health and Human Services willing to go in there and take on those people like he has?
Yeah.
Name one for me in recent history.
Incredible. No, they've all been marchers to the same drum. There's no question.
Bingo.
So this is, in a way, it's the most significant appointment of the entire Trump presidency.
I definitely think so. Because, let's just look at healthcare, man. Maybe this is why they're so upset at Bobby, because in taking out the corporate interest in healthcare, he's really also, in a certain sense, targeting that vast government subsidy of the healthcare insurance companies and the big pharma companies that got a big injection. Thank you, Barack Obama.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, if that's why they're upset at him, then go ahead and be upset, because you guys are the ones that put in that whole system of rotten corruption in the first place.
Exactly.
And if it takes another Democrat to tell you that, this whole system is rotten and corrupt, more power to him. I don't get it. Huh?
There's a kind of purist snobbery around as if you could go in and eliminate, vaccines and all pharma interest on day one, and it should all be like that, and just there's no opposition. And I mean, come on, you have to be realistic about the amount of things. He has people in there at HHS like Jay Bhattacharya, so outspoken on the medical freedom side. I mean, it's off the charts.
Yeah, I think you put your finger out with the term purist.
Yeah,
because as far as I can recall, Mr. Kennedy nowhere at no time ever came out against all vaccines.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Excellent point.
He's not that stupid.
Yeah. Right. But Joseph, with your deep, deep political insight, do you see, as I'm seeing this, that this is some kind of a backdoor effort by the very same forces that he's opposed to move into his own camp and try to overthrow him from his own side.
Oh, sure, of course.
So that they can say he's not hardcore enough.
Yeah, I would not be a bit surprised. These people, the corporate greedsters, I'm thinking particularly of Burla and Pfizer with its vaccines. I wouldn't put anything past these people. I really, really wouldn't, because they are making billions off of ill-tested drugs and keeping people sick.
Yes.
So I have no sympathy for them. As far as I'm concerned, go get them, Bobby.
Yeah. No, I think that entire establishment, I think Bobby's, public enemy number one for them.
Oh, I definitely
really
think
do.
so. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if they cannot, he symbolizes a revolt against their whole,
Yeah.
let me put it bluntly, against their whole practice of medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, he really is symbolic of a revolt against a system that really has been put in place by the whole Rockefeller interest all the way back to J.D. Rockefeller himself.
Oh, yeah.
And the funding of Johns Hopkins and that whole, there's a lot of interconnected institutional power that he is challenging.
Yes.
And to expect him to be able to deal with that whole rotten, and trust me, folks, it's rotten, to deal with that whole rotten edifice in a mere 9 months.
It reminds me of Bobby Kennedy at the Justice Department.
Bingo.
Taking on the mafia interests and everything else.
Exactly.
It's an extraordinary echo, and you can feel that force. It's the strike back over time. And, I feel like the same thing when we talk about JFK in relation to the UFO file and what we're dealing with now with Trump and the Golden Dome and trying to regain the UFO file under executive control. The battle rages on 62 years later.
Yes. And I'm glad you put it that way, that it's an attempt to get the control of the UFO file back into the executive branch. Because, I covered this in my book, SS Brotherhood of the Bell. I spent a lot of time in that book for a reason, examining all of those Cooper Cantwell Majestic 12 documents.
Right.
Because it's in that particular set of the Magic 12 documents that you see documentation that it was Nixon that removed the UFO file from the government and placed it into the hands of the private corporations.
It's crucial. That is a crucial move.
Absolutely crucial move. Absolutely. And I tend, at the time that those documents were out and I was doing that book, we did not have the contextual corroborating evidence that we have now that indicates that this is exactly what happened under Nixon.
Mm-hmm.
But so I approach the documents the way I approach all of my blogs on the website. Let's assume that this is authentic and true information for the sake of developing a hypothesis of its implications. So I think what you're getting at now with the attempt by the intelligence part of the deep state with all of these documentaries and so on is they're not only trying to wrest control of the narrative away from independent researchers, which again I don't think they'll ever be successful in doing. They're going to have to put us in camps and up against the wall and shoot us. I mean, that's just how you have to do it.
Yeah.
And I don't put that past them, but
that's what they're good at.
Yeah, that's what they're good at. But you start doing that with too many people, and people start asking questions. But the other thing I think that this is about is that they've figured out that in releasing all of this to the corporations, they've created a monster, and that those corporations are now powerful enough to form threats to not just national security but sovereignty. We're dealing with corporations that have been developing these types of technologies for decades.
Right. Oh, wow.
They're
Yeah.
the ones that control it. You know, this is, in a certain sense, this is not like Nazi Germany, where, you know, the government issues an order, you develop such and such a weapons, and we get to control them, and the scientists producing them. Not the same situation. So they've got to reassert control over it.
It was a dangerous lapse, handing it over to the corporation.
It was a dangerous lapse, and the reason I'm stressing this point, Daniel, and this is why I brought up this sovereign wealth fund earlier, because if you look at what Mr. Trump is doing with this thing, not only is he incorporating kleptocurrency, as I like to call it, into this sovereign wealth fund, but literally it's a means of collateralizing the infrastructure of the federal government.
Oh,
and
interesting.
doing a, you know, we'll swap hard assets for computer blips. That's you know, this is the ultimate scam. But as part of the thinking here, I think there's the definite possibility of a hidden component to this thing that he's trying to get going, and that is to use this as a means of reasserting actual governmental ownership, or put government equity stakes into those corporations. Notice what I just said, equity stakes. In other words, the government goes in and buys a major voting block of stock in Lockheed Martin or Northrop Grumman, and so on and so forth.
This is what Trump is suggesting.
Yes, this is exactly what I think the plan is.
Yeah.
As a way of reasserting some measure of control over those corporations, and therefore of the contracting and bidding process in defense. So there's a lot going on in all of this. Whether
That's fascinating.
He'll be successful, I don't know.
Well, the danger there in trying to attach, because there's two things, which is it makes tremendous sense in a way to take Lockheed and Boeing and make them part of the official government umbrella. Right. Because then you get the assets of all that technology that they're able to keep private. But the danger is those people in government.
Yes, I agree. It is, you know, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. When Nixon privatizes things, he creates a monster, but not doing so would have also created a monster. So
excellent point. Right.
I think they've decided that we're going to go the middle route and buy major equity stakes in these companies, so that we still have a proprietary interest in the technologies that they control, because now we're part owners of that very technology, and that gives them, an additional. It creates a massive conflict of interest, obviously, from the legal standpoint, but that gives them a measure of control and influence over the bidding and contractual process itself, which, as you know, in this country is a mess.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolute mess.
Yeah.
So, you know, this whole
move. It's a power move. It's an outside the box move.
Yes.
To do it. The problem, I guess, with it is that it could get outside of Trump's control, and you have literally Lockheed controlling. You know, it's a very interesting thing, because with the shutdown and everything that was going on, Trump at one point says, "Oh, I got $130 million to keep running the military from an independent billionaire," right? And it turned out that the independent billionaire was Timothy Mellon, the uncle of John Warner IV, and the brother of Catherine Mellon, the heiress to the Mellon fortune, and also Chris Mellon's, you know, distant relative there.
Ain't that interesting? No connection with the UFO file with the Mellon family. Oh, no.
But isn't this extraordinary, where the government shuts down and the billionaires step up? But it's an unusual transfer also, because it's a stopgap measure, and yet it is a private wealth group paying the military.
It is, you know, what we're watching with this particular development is can only be qualified as inverse fascism.
Oh,
because and and I know the left has been hollering fascism, fascism, and I could care less about what those nutcases think fascism is. Fascism, bluntly put, is private ownership of property, including corporations and equity stakes and all that continue. It's just that the government gets to set the policy of how it's controlled and used.
Right.
That's classical Benito Mussolini fascism. Okay.
Right.
On saldo, Olivetti, fiat, go do your thing, except when I say we're going to do this. Okay.
Right.
What we're seeing now is a reverse of the roles, because it's not government telling corporations how they're going to form policy. It's now private equity and policy and corporations telling the government how we're going to form policy. So it's still the same structure, but the control is going in a different direction here.
Right.
It's establishing, again, a very bad precedent. But again, if my reading of this sovereign wealth fund and its implications for the Black Project's corporate research world is true, then I think what we're watching with this shutdown is another little aspect, another little page in this chapter being written as we speak. It's been a very interesting development to watch, and I'm very glad you mentioned it, because we need to put this out there on the table for people to think about.
Incredible. Yeah, absolutely. I guess to round out our entire conversation here today, which has been loaded with so many potentialities and strange moves on the part of the deep state, I want to just get your reflections, and we'll do a full episode on this at some point. And we've touched on it, of course, you've touched on it deeply. But the aspects of Havana syndrome in relation to the UFO file.
Oh, I think it's huge.
Yeah.
I think it's huge. And there's any number of ways to play this. If you have a mind manipulation technology that quite literally is capable of injecting via modulated microwaves, literally injecting voices into the human brain and carrying on internal conversations, and the very same technology kind of in reverse, able to read the brain waves of an individual and using what I've called electroencephalographic dictionaries, actual pictures of the brainwave patterns as certain words are spoken to or occur to an individual, and thereby use those patterns to read what that internal conversation is saying. If you've got a technology like that, and that technology, let's remember, has been in development, at least in the public record that we're aware of, as far back as the early 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got that kind of technology, then it becomes possible to stage events like abductions, where the abductees are experiencing telepathic conversations.
Oh, right.
This is constantly part of one of the themes you'll find over and over again in a lot of these abductions. Well, is it really telepathy that's being used here, or is it a technology? And
Right.
for that matter, is telepathy an example of that kind of physics phenomenon of modulated microwave interferometry? So again, I think there's a huge possibility here that a lot of these things that we attribute to ET may in fact be something that is a human black technology in development.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a definite UFO connection. And let's go further. If if we follow the crash and recovery scenario, who's to say that these technologies aren't part of that crash and recovery scenario?
Yes.
Again, I'm not a fan of the crash and recovery scenario because I think it's way overused in ufology.
I guess it's enough to just say that it has happened.
It has happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, would that be something that might have been part of that technology that has been again, we don't know, but I think
it makes a great deal of sense. You're tapping right into it, but finish that thought.
Well, as I say, I'm not a fan of the crash and recovery scenario because I happen to think that if that's your first place that you go to in trying to explain advanced technology, then you've really surrendered the field.
Mm-hmm.
It's not explanation, because what that does is it prevents you from seeking explanations in the human scientific literature
mm-hmm.
for these types of things. But once you do those searches, does that search exclude the possibility that it may be a technology? No, it doesn't.
Right.
That was crashed and recovered.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there a UFO connection? I certainly think there is. Absolutely, I do.
It really seems to add up. And I'll tell you, we had Eric Hecker on the program, and he's the Antarctica whistleblower who spent, a good deal of time there. One of the things he talked about was the activation of this incredible exotic device, the neutrino ice cube detector.
Yep.
And one of the things that was heard and that he discovered in relationship by working with the crew there was that apparently UFOs themselves emit neutrinos, and that part of the function of this thing was to act as a kind of air traffic control or monitoring system for UFOs, ours and the others.
It could be,
Yeah.
It could be. Let's really get wild and woolly. Since we're going to mind manipulation technologies, let's take the Wile E. Coyote into the dive off the canyon wall into the bottom of the canyon. What is Tesla's wireless broadcast technology? Well, as I've said many times, it simply flips the normal broadcast circuit where the antenna is beaming out into the atmosphere and the return part of the circuit is the ground. Okay.
Right.
So he simply flips it, and he uses the planet as the broadcast antenna and the atmosphere as the return circuit. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Now couple that with mind manipulation technology. You've got the possibility of using the entire planet as a broadcast circuit for mind manipulation. And via a phased antenna array, you could focus the concentrated, most efficient part of that technology on a particular region of the planet. Think Dr. Nick Begich in Alaska and HARP. What has he been saying for years and years and years and years?
Incredible.
This is a mind manipulation device. Well, yeah, could be. Who knows? Because we certainly all seem to be going crazy as a planet. So.
Well, it's interesting. In the very heart of the patent is this aspect of the HARP patent, which is drawn from Tesla technology directly.
Yeah.
And of course, you and I mean, we've gone down a very interesting road in terms of how this stuff was developed, because I've learned from your research around CERN to go back and check out how they developed particle colliding in the first place. Mm-hmm. And the people that show up there, like the Varian brothers and like John Trump and others, shows you the progression of who was working on the most potent and the blackest projects, including Townsend Brown.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Particle accelerators, Nikola Tesla himself came out with ideas for particle accelerators in the late 19th century.
Wow.
The Norwegian physicist Birkeland and people like this, these things the idea has been around for a while, as has the technology. You had the technology for basic particle accelerators in the late 19th century. So, whoop-de-woo, big deal. It may have taken us 40 years to build a cyclotron with them, but that doesn't mean that nobody could have done it earlier. Which, you know me, I'm thinking they probably did.
So, Joseph, as a preview of our next episode, they're developing now a CERN Hadron Collider to follow up on your particle collider, particle smasher. That is 5 times the build of the original. And when I've seen the map, the original looks like this, and then you've got the gigantic outskirts of this whole thing. I presented this on the Alex Jones show, interestingly enough, and the feedback was phenomenal from people who wrote me, who were associated with the first one. But I want to say this, that development of one that's 5 times bigger, after all the controversy and all the things that they did with the original one, larger, bigger, badder, even more unusual connotations occult-wise, environmentally, the ionosphere. What's going on there? Let's give that preview of what is happening.
Oh, I know exactly where I think you're going with this. Let's remember that when CERN itself was approaching completion, there was a lot of concern being voiced by various scientific and non-scientific circles in Europe and over here in North America, that when the collider was turned on, that they were going to create singularities. And in fact, CERN itself said that one of their goals was to try to study the so-called quark gluon plasma. Okay.
Yes.
If you research a quark gluon plasma, they are essentially mini singularities. They're kind of miniature black holes. And so there was a concern, not to coin a pun, there was a concern that CERN was going to create a mini black hole and that it was going to gobble up the planet.
Yes. And the scientists who brought it forward, totally legitimate.
Well, the scientists were completely legitimate. And CERN's response was, to me, this is classic. CERN's response was to say, well, quantum mechanics tells us if I drop this pen, it's going to hit my desk and stop falling. But quantum mechanics tells us that there's a 1 in a billion chance that it might not hit the desk and just fall right through the desk and keep on falling. And that's the percent chance that we have that a quark gluon plasma is going to gobble up the planet. So yeah, we're going to throw the die.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
If the black hole swallows the planet, so what?
So what? Whoops. We goofed again. It's kind of like the Castle Bravo test. It's only going to be a mere 7 megatons. Oh, well, we kind of miscalculated on that one. But this is a much bigger whoops.
Wow.
My problem all along, that's my first problem with it. My second problem with it all along was just looking at CERN, and people think that I'm nuts with this. I had an interview with a particle scientist that actually worked at CERN, and I laid all this out for her, and my impression was that she had never even thought of what I was laying out for her, and her reaction as I was watching her facial expressions was abject horror, But anyway, my whole problem with the CERN accelerators, because there are 5 of them. There's 5 particle accelerators, and they're all kind of linked together. My problem with them, as I have insisted all along, is that I don't think it's as much about particle physics. That's kind of the public cover story, but they can do a lot more with it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I was concerned about from the very get-go is the arrangement of the 2 cylinders, the synchrotron that injects the protons into the hadron collider part of the of the system, the big circle, is a smaller circular particle accelerator that sits, if you look at the axis of rotation of each of the particle accelerators, it sits kind of on the lip or edge of the big one underneath it. Mm-hmm. So in other words, it's not on the same axis of rotation. Its axis of rotation is over here.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, that, folks, right there is a classic definition of dynamic torsion. You've got two rotating systems on different axes of rotation. That's dynamic torsion. And both of them are doing so by the use of rotating, extremely powerful electromagnetic fields. So I have been arguing till I'm blue in the face. I made this presentation at Bastrop. I've been arguing until I'm blue in the face that this is really about investigating torsion effects. So what happens? They turned the dang thing on. Remember when they first fired this up, they turned the dang thing on, they rev it up to full power, and they have to shut it down right away.
Yes.
Because they're telling us that the coolant in some of the magnets started to leak and the magnets grew too hot, and kablooey, they had a minor explosion and they had to turn it off. Wow. Go look at if you can find it, Daniel, go look at the pictures of the ring of the Hadron Collider where that magnet supposedly melted down. And what you're going to discover is like someone took a scissors and cut that whole ring in half at a particular point, and one whole part of that ring accelerator is lifted above and twisted above the other like that. Wow. That's torsion.
That's torsion, and that's the torsion physics principle.
Bingo.
In action.
Wow. Bingo. And I looked at that. I even emailed the picture to Hoagland and said, look at this. And you know, to this day, I defy them to say that was not an unanticipated torsion effect. They're giving us a cover story about magnets and cooling and all this happy horse pucky, but the real effect here is torsion. Now, I'm saying all this because the other thing that they finally admitted that I and others were saying right out the bat, this is not about testing particle physics. This is about testing higher dimensional physics.
Oh, right.
Right.
Yes.
They denied that vehemently at the start. Now they admit, oh yeah, we're looking for extra dimensions.
Yes. Then they just casually throw it out there.
Now they just casually throw it out there. So what I think this bigger accelerator is their torsion experiments are successful. Now they want to scale it up. They're studying that phenomenon. And they've probably also discovered that those gigantic electromagnetic fields that the thing generates are having resonance effects in the magnetosphere of the planet. And therefore, they're probably having resonance effects, magnetic resonance effects in the entire solar system, including the sun. I know that sounds crazy, but that's what I think.
Wow. Unbelievable. And that would affect everything from weather to earthquakes.
Yep.
To, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that could get your pole shift moving a little quicker.
That could get your pole shift moving real fast. Yeah. In other words, how do you demonstrate to ET, who's out there in a class 1 or class 2 Kardashev civilization scale? I've been arguing this. I've said it over and over in my books. How do you convince them to leave humanity well enough alone? The Kardashev system, remember, a class 1 civilization uses the mass energy conversion of an entire planet to sustain itself. Class 2, a mass energy conversion of an entire star. Class 3, a mass energy conversion of an entire planet. So obviously, if you're a class 3 civilization, you're not going to be concerned with these little monkeys down here on this marble at the edge of the solar system. No. But if you're class 1 or 2, you're going to be a little bit more interested in what they're up to. Now, how are you going to convince that kind of civilization to leave us well enough alone? Well, you have to demonstrate to them that you can engineer systems of a planetary or stellar scale.
Right.
And if you can, and not that you require the energy conversion of systems of that scale, but merely that you're able to engineer systems of that scale. There's a difference. So these are my corollaries to Kardashev. I've always called them the Farrell corollaries. So you demonstrate to them that you're engineering systems of that scale. And therefore, if you can engineer systems of that scale, what else can you do with them? You can weaponize them. So, look out, Mars. Don't land here with your heat rays. Thank you, H.G. Wells, and start shooting everything up. Because we have some nasty surprises in store for you if you do.
Interesting. It's a demonstration of weaponry.
It's gunboat diplomacy, Daniel, pure and simple. You want to leave us alone because we can project some pretty nasty solar flares in your direction. How do we do that? Well, magnetic resonance.
Incredible.
Yeah.
CERN, the real story there. Yeah. And the bigger it gets, the more powerful the statement.
Yeah. The more powerful the statement, and the more efficiently you can engineer systems of that scale. Plus whatever else you're finding out.
The publicly documented budget, $26 billion.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
I can believe. And here's the other thing I meant, I laid all this out in the book, The Third Way, all of this CERN stuff. But the other thing that we need to remember is we are being told by CERN that, we've found the Higgs boson, and we found this and we found that. But we're looking at science, so-called science now, that they can literally claim to have found anything, and none of us would be in a position to verify it. Why? Because for us to verify it, we're going to have to build a big particle accelerator in our garage capable of doing just the same
exactly
thing.
Right.
So this is what gave the game away to me. What did China start talking about after CERN started making all these announcements? And China's a member of CERN. Well, we're going to build our own bigger version of it. Why would you need to do that? Well, you're doing that because you have questions about the data you're getting, and the only way to check the data and check the claims is to build one yourself. Do your own experiment.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And by the way, let's not forget the Russians also said the same thing at one point. We better build our own. Well, why? There's something that they're noticing that their scientists are noticing in the data coming out of CERN that is not making sense. And it goes back to what I say. I don't think this is just about particle physics. That's the cover story.
Wow.
They want
incredible.
And let's not forget, who's the biggest financial stake in CERN? By country?
By country. Ooh.
By country. When did it come online?
It's Germany.
Germany.
Yes.
Yeah. When Angela Merkel, PhD in quantum chemistry, no less, was chancellor.
Wow.
Oh, there's a story.
Yes. And of course, our friend from Chase Manhattan, John J. McCloy, he's right there setting it up.
Right there. Yep. Let's make these Europeans have their own nuclear thing. Okay, good.
By the way, he's ready to get on the Warren Commission as well.
Oh yeah, isn't that
the official version?
Just happened to be the lawyer for IG Farben. Hey, good for you, John.
McCloy, the mover and the shaker behind CERN. Joseph, incredible. Of course, your latest book, Rialto Richmond, and then Rialto Reconstructed, an incredible double volume on the Civil War and the deep aspects involved, available at GIZADeathStar.com. Where does everyone find it?
They can go on the website and under the About button, they'll find the books and they can order off the website. If they don't want to do that, it's at Amazon. It's at Adventures Unlimited Press. Just look for it. Yeah, but yeah, those two books definitely go together because they're kind of one of the things that they kind of indicate is that this deep state advanced technology thing does have roots in the Civil War. As crazy as that sounds,
Oh yeah,
it's definitely there if you look at it.
I remember a conversation with Professor Scott a few years ago when I was speaking with him, and he told me the one thing I wish I had done was a deep state book on the assassination of President Lincoln.
Oh, absolutely.
And here we have your incredible tome on this. And I love recommending this book always as the headlines before they hit: Covert Wars and Breakaway Civilizations. If you can get that one,
oh yeah,
get it, because it's got so much in there. What a classic, incredible work. And the follow-up on that one was the Clash of Civilizations book.
Yeah.
And those two go together as well, just like this set with the Civil War. And Joseph, we'll get back together and we're going to do something deep on CERN. And I won't give the rest of it away, but this should be big.
Hello, everyone. This is Dark Journalist with a special Part 2 interview with cutting-edge alternative research author John Warner IV. In Part 1, we went through John's history as the son of majestic UFO member, the late Senator John Warner of Virginia. John exposed the new Age of Disclosure CIA big-budget documentary featuring disgraced former DNI James Clapper and a host of counterintelligence agents peddling a UFO threat narrative. In this special episode, John will reveal what he's been hearing from insiders in D.C. in UFO think tanks and what they're saying about World War III and alien technology. Is it happening now? Please join us now. John, it's great to have you back with us.
It is excellent to be back.
It has been a while. I know you've been up to a lot, and you're working on book number 4?
That is correct. I am working on book 4 in my series. I got to touch on Antarctica and Project High Jump.
Fantastic.
I always call it Project High Jump. I think it was Operation High Jump.
Operation, yes.
And some other things. But yes, I've been actually working with a couple of think tanks in D.C., giving them help in any area, especially military history, which sadly there's a lot of consternation going on around the world. Militaries are being built up, and of course there is a classified arms race with all that new physics technology, which is very concerning.
Yes.
And so, there's a lot of interest around the DC area about whether or not certain disclosure initiatives could shift the focus away from, hey, let's, use our new toys and, blow up the earth 10 times over. Wouldn't want to lose Australia out to space, and wouldn't want Japan to sink under the water, stuff like that, no big deal, but, concerning.
Yes. Wow. A little Edgar Casey Earth changes, anyone?
Yeah. It could be human, man-made Earth changes, which is pretty sobering, actually.
It's Atlantis all over again, John.
It does seem there's a lot of correlation with the legends. I don't know if anyone's going to throw asteroids or whatever, but they might. I think we have the technology to do that. As a friend of mine once said, when all else fails, just throw rocks, really big ones. And boy, that really gets people's attention.
Yes.
We've
been seeing a lot of those fireballs. It seems like an increasing number of fireballs everywhere. Like, it's just meteorites, but it seems like the number is quadrupled in the last 2 years.
Yeah. What I worry about, and some of my colleagues, are they warnings to certain groups and people? Because remember, it's not just Russia, China, North Korea, America, Five Eyes. You know, it's always the factions, whether it be corporate or international or national corporate. You know, all kinds of things. You know, little wars go on and they're not noticed, and it's like one corporation battling another for territory or you know, markets or whatever. So it's that doesn't make things easier. It makes them more complicated.
No question. No question. That hidden technology, the public has no idea about. You know, they've seen some science fiction, they've heard some stuff around these fields, you know, but they're about 50 years out of step with what's actually going on.
Yeah, generally speaking, yes. Some of the people I've talked to in DC are aware of the potentialities and the possible, you know, fallout from some of those weapons. I tend to have a broader military mind on that than some people. Some people are worried about like one thing. In other words, in my perspective, big nukes are not our issue. They're kind of a useless weapon, whether they have radiation or, you know, given the Ripple experiments, it doesn't matter. They're very destructive and dirty. It's the smaller tactical nukes, which may not have any radiation signatures that last very long. Those can be used. No, it's the weapons. Let me give you an example. I said to a group of people, I said, look, you got Finland and Poland and the Baltic states just itching to fight Putin. They're almost in a you know, attack mode. You know, I bet a lot of those military generals and things would like to attack Russia, go over the border into Russia. But to my mind, Putin doesn't have to put one boot on NATO soil. Not one. Not a tank, not a truck, sure, a drone, maybe an aircraft overflying, but nothing on the ground. Because if you take a scalar frequency weapon, similar to what Eric Hecker was talking about, the Ice Cube project, you know, but if you had it on a sub or an aircraft or a satellite or a low Earth LEO orbit aerial platform, I'm going to pick on Copenhagen for no reason at all. So you have Copenhagen, Putin wants to make a message. So you fire an EMP weapon, everything goes out in Copenhagen, everything with the chip is fried, all the electronics are fried, the grid goes down, no electricity. Then he uses, let's say, a sub off the coast, and he uses a frequency weapon to start a mild earthquake. And most of Copenhagen crumbles, not too much, but enough to get people's attention.
Yes.
And then he's like, you still want to tangle with me?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And Finland says, you know, up yours, Putin, we're going to attack. And they cross the border and everything like that. I mean, I think he has weapons to melt down a tank division. Where they sit. You know, you're talking about weapons. You know, I know Farrell's been talking about it for a long time. I have. These are things that are not only have quantum possibilities, but using a 0-point weapon that's been weaponized, you know, a generator or something. You could sink Japan in a day using earthquake weapons, or, you know, anything like that.
Wow.
I mean,
yeah.
You know, I talked to one guy and he's like, I think they could blow Australia into space, leaving a 2,000-foot hole where Australia used to be. And I'm like, whoa, I don't want to think about that. And it's like, but that's the kind of potential we're talking about. And so everyone's fighting the last war. I understand that. You know, the public, you know, but the generals and admirals in the know, they know some of these new generational weapons can do severe damage without radiation, without, you know, sort of damaging the environment too much. But, you know, you look up the rods of God and it says theoretical weapon. Okay, that's bullshit. And we've had it for 30 years plus. You know, all these 400 Chinese ships that are out there, you could put a rod from a satellite orbit, you know, and one rod, one ship. You know, so I'm not worried about Chinese naval. They can cause a lot of damage, you know, go around the Pacific, but, you know, and then the Chinese Navy is sitting on the bottom. Then what do? Well, Xi goes to the toy box and says, you know, let's sink Australia and Japan. That'll get their, you know, and there may not be a way to deter that.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's Absolutely. I'm confident the United States does have a protective dome of some sort. We've had it since the 60s, really, with the Hughes aircraft stuff and
yes.
Star Wars, Reagan Star Wars. We've had that for a long time. But that, you're talking about physical objects, missiles, aircraft, things like that. It may not work with frequency weapons. And I don't think it, I don't know, but I don't think it can protect us from EMP pulses.
Mm-hmm. Are you hearing in the background that people really on the inside are concerned about World War III?
Yes, very concerned. They sure as hell wouldn't contact me for help if they didn't. You know, I'm sort of out there on the bleeding edge with you guys.
Thank God.
But there are people that weren't there that are there now.
Yeah.
The problem is, you know, who's on whose side, and that's a little difficult because I know that I watch Gaia. I think some of the stuff is good. Richard Doty's on there telling ghost stories, UFO ghost stories. Yeah. What I call them, they're sort of mild. You know, an ET escaped S4 and it stole a station wagon and left a family on the side of the road. I mean, okay, that, you know, did they
probably happen?
Wagon back? I mean, you know, but he did say that he's part of his own think tank of older guys, insiders who are retired, and he said we're not happy with the narrow focus group that's currently active on Capitol Hill. Now we all know who that is. That's Mellon, Elizondo, Avi Loeb, and you know, Gillibrand, Burchett gang. Hole in the wall gang, the hole in the head gang, I call them.
Yes, the UFO threat cadre.
Yeah, and so, but you know, you're talking about people in their 90s, late 80s, 90s. Sometimes that's okay, but the feeling is around town from the people I've been working with, and we've been working with a few billionaires with that, you know, their companies have benefited from reverse engineered technology.
Yes.
And one of them we met in London, and this person said, I would love to have some disclosure as long as it doesn't affect my bottom line.
Wow.
And I said, well, if we're all dead in 10 years, that's going to affect your bottom line.
Yeah, right.
Unless you want to live underground somewhere. I don't. I like being above ground. I can't speak for everyone, but I mean, or you can leave the planet and go somewhere else with, you know, a group which may or may not need you and your corporation. You know, I try to explain that in a very calm way to him, but you know, no. But there are others who significant. I mean, my uncle obviously cares. I don't know exactly what his knowledge base is regarding, you know, the national security state technology, you know, division.
Interesting, yeah.
Plural. But I think he knows something, and he definitely has his heart in the right place. You know, I wrote him a note, said, thank you for helping the troops with their pay.
Yes.
Yeah, everyone thinks it's Chris Mellon's uncle. It's not. It's my uncle. Trust
yes. Me. Yeah.
He doesn't have the greatest affinity for Chris. So we did discuss that. But, you know, the people that are now sort of interested that weren't so much before, you know, national security trumps all, you know, don't want to give our enemies any secrets. Well, I don't either, but revelations of certain technologies and where we got them from and maybe who we're working with, that might get people's attention away from, oh, I just want to blow up the world.
Yes.
Literally.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there were, you know, mutual assured destruction. There were win scenarios with nuclear weapons. Oh, no. these new physics weapons, that's what it's called. That's the buzz phrase. The new physics weapons.
Right.
You can use those and have your country survive, but everyone else is dead.
Yeah.
Okay. And, the rest of the earth is okay. The flora and the fauna are some of them may die, but basically the earth is intact. And so it's given a lot of flexibility. Let's just theorize, Xi and the Chinese are like, now we can really, swing a bat around and knock people in the head and see, so they can see things our way, it's the Chinese way.
Yes.
Which is, divide and conquer, ports, African countries, resource, colonialism.
Right.
And, a smaller nation might say, okay, because we don't want to suffer your wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know the United States doesn't want war with China or Russia or North Korea if we can avoid it. Everyone's on board with that, except for a few people who would literally rather go down with the ship than give up anything in the national security state, whether it be information or advantage or weapon systems or any kind of truth or transparency on that. And so you're running up against the modern day LeMays, General LeMay.
Yeah,
would
absolutely.
really rather die in a fireball than give up anything. But something's got to give. This is it's no joke anymore. It's there's no Cold War. The gray zone warfare is hotter than ever.
Yes.
It's the Russians and Chinese are really actively, and North Koreans too, and Iran and some other smaller players. They're really active in the gray zone warfare. It's getting to be a real pain, and it's much beyond the Cold War. They've upped the ante big time. So it's very concerning, how to do it. But since the Roman Empire, we've been taught to fight wars.
Yeah.
And we're good at it. And apparently out there, we're really good at it. We build good stuff. We're good engineers. So there's actually a lot to be proud of, as well. There are some dark aspects to this, especially when you get into the occult and interdimensional entities, jinn, archon areas. It is dark. But that's part of our duality. We live in a duality universe. If you watch Star Trek, I'm a Star Trek fan. They talk about our duality, and they're always fighting.
The people who created it understood. There's no question.
Yeah.
That is an interesting point. And also, when you see Vice President Vance or Tucker, or Congresswoman Luna saying UFOs are demons, don't you know?
Demonic. Yeah, that's it.
They're demons. And it's obviously a bald-faced, naked effort to swing the Christian thing behind the UFO thing by telling them it's demons. We need a UFO defense office. We have to have those billions to go out there. And fight them off.
DDO,
John, what do you think when you see that?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And Rubio is with that effort, on Capitol Hill.
Yes.
This is they're trying to put 1,000 tons of toothpaste back in a half-ton tube.
Wow. Exactly. This is the problem.
It's not going to work, and it's
excellent point.
The definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And Mellon, Rubio, and all these guys, they've had 8 years now to do something.
They just manipulated it down their own corridor.
Yeah, in their minds, they got the Valet idea, and he's in that mix, Soul Foundation. They need this rigid steel and iron structure.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. I understand that, but without flexibility in this, this is the biggest issue in human history. It needs flexibility.
Yes.
No one has the facts straight. No group has that. You know, I'm sure on the inside they know a lot of truth, but no one has the whole ball of wax. And so, you know, by doing this rigid thing, you know, they can only, it's like the analogy would be in a cage. I mean, you can see the people outside the cage, but you're inside this protective iron cage. Well, how are you going to have a meet and greet and mingle and talk with people if you're inside this protective cage? It's like they built this giant 50-ton tank.
Right.
And they pop the hatch and they wave and they're like, yay, here's some UFO truth. And, you know, out pops a flag that says truth instead of, you know, a shell out the barrel. I mean,
so that's the controlled disclosure op that's meant to benefit the groups that are approaching this, that are on the inside, that are intel, connected with corporate interests, defense contractor interests. That's their game.
Yeah.
It seems like. What I want to ask you is, it's very interesting.
What genius thought that up that would work? Oh, they're going to believe us because we're officials and scientists?
Yeah, exactly.
Some, yes. Some people believe them. You know, that's the narrative. That's the word. Everything
actually,
else
considering the amount of media, money, intel, government, everything that was behind them, they've done an incredibly poor job.
It's piss poor. I mean, I'm sorry. You know, they thought, oh, we got, you know, the officials out there and some scientists, well-known ufologists, you know, ufologists. What the fuck is that? You know, I mean, you know, Jacques Vallée had half a century, and his cohorts, Eric Davis, and, you know, all these other guys, you know, that are, you know, scientists, ufologists, and, you know, they bicker about their titles.
Right.
But so what? You're all in the same game. You've worked on the inside. Big deal. You're not giving anyone anything concrete. You're just giving us more of the same. It's just got a, you know, Pentagon, U.S. Gov, you know, stamp on it.
Exactly.
That's not transparency. That's just more of the same.
Exactly. If anything, they're recycling and rehashing narratives that were big in the 1980s and 1990s and pretending that they're just laying them out for the first time. And God, gosh, can you believe it? You know, we actually redistributed and redeveloped a UFO craft. Yeah. You know, we knew that, what, in the 1970s? Close encounters?
I've said it a million times. This would have worked fine 35 years ago.
Yes. Years ago. Well, let me ask you this. I want to take this into, I want to crisscross this Age of Disclosure documentary that's coming out. A lot of fanfare, big marketing budget, CIA big budget, Dan Farrell, Steven Spielberg's producer, and also Lue Elizondo's agent, Jay Stratton's agent, Grush's agent. This guy pretending he can talk objectively and ask objective questions of these people when he's their agent is absurd to start with. But I want to get to this because you came out 2021.
You and I need an agent. I got a gal here. She's worked on the inside. She could be our agent.
I know. Here comes the agent.
Farrell said it best. Who the hell needs an agent for this?
Exactly. Why would you need an agent if you're a whistleblower? It makes no sense.
Well, I've worked in film and television, and I'll tell you my opinion.
Yes.
They have this narrative, but it's just a piece of Swiss cheese. You could look through it. It's got so many holes, and it's really not much there. So in order to give it the appearance of more solidity, more, you know, value, you know, credibility, anything, they're going to get agents and press, and you know, they did this film with a lot of money. You know, apparently there's not much photographs or film footage in it. It's just all talking heads.
Yes.
You know, I know you and I are here, we're talking heads, but
no, this is incredible. Here they are doling this thing out. They've already done these previews in various theaters. As a matter of fact, this thing was shot a year and a half ago. They held on to it, and I'm going to get into that also because that is very shady, the way that they've done that and combined it with the 3i Atlas thing, which supposedly was only found in July. But Age of Disclosure, the big budget documentary with Farrell at the helm and all of the spooks right at the front, the main character, well, Elizondo's narrating it, and the character that they're putting front and center for all this is James Clapper, the disgraced former DNI.
My hero.
John.
Come on.
I mean, where are you coming from as a filmmaker doing that? Obviously, either you don't know or you're instructed who to put up there. Either way, it's a total bomb.
Was he named after a venereal disease? Not sure. Yeah,
he's an admitted perjurer. He bugged Congress. Why are we going to listen to him about the most important subject in human history?
Yeah, it's insane. Why? I mean, they're doubling down on all the bad guys.
Yes.
Doubling down on the same old thing and adding more bad guys in the mix. Exactly. I mean, it's insane to start with, doing the same thing over and over again. But now they got more, it's nefarious, questionable people. It's
incredible.
The mind. I mean,
yeah.
What is their objective? JP's right. They're going to get raked over the coals starting tonight.
Right.
But it's insane.
But, Bill Maher had Dan Farrell on, John.
Yeah.
And he lobbed him all these softball questions like, and Dan Farrell was like, our time has come, disclosure can't be denied. Look, all my CIA friends have told me so. I mean, going to the CIA for the truth about the UFO file is like going to a serial killer for aid and comfort. I mean, it is ridiculous as a concept because they're trained to lie.
Yeah. I mean, how many foxes do you want to have at the henhouse party?
Yes.
I mean, just they keep inviting more, oh, you get truth here. There's no, hens will be fine. Look, see, all the foxes are around. Right. It's a bloodbath.
Yeah.
And the truth is really the victim.
Oh, that's a really good point.
I've never had a good feeling about Spielberg because in the 80s, well, in the 90s, when I started defining more about the Ahnenerbe and, how he didn't show that it was the SS in charge of archaeological digs with Waffen-SS and the Ahnenerbe scientists. He just made them regular German Wehrmacht. And I thought, I wonder.
It's pretty big to leave out. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of big there. There would have been SS standards everywhere. They would have had newsreels. And, they kind of softened that Indiana Jones thing. I mean, they really were looking for the Ark of the Covenant and how there were many, many arks. I mean, this is all about technology, the hunt for technology over the ages. But, it's going back to Spielberg. It's like, I mean, Close Encounters was fabulous for the time. Absolutely point on. And everyone was like, yeah. And nothing afterwards.
Incredible.
Just, ET phone home, silly crap like that.
Yeah. They had Hynek in the mix there, and it seemed like something was going to happen, and it just got shot down.
No, and there's always the story. There's a half an hour of the film missing or more.
Oh, that's interesting.
Probably true, in my guess. Just like a lot of films get made, and they're like, take that out.
Right.
Better take that out.
Spielberg is releasing a UFO movie in 2026 that he shot in New Jersey, and his consultant is Lue Elizondo in the movie. I mean,
fan-frickin-tastic.
Are you kidding me?
Drones.
Yes.
This is the new thing, drone. You didn't see a UFO. That was a drone.
Exactly.
But it was 5 miles wide, and it was going Mach 50. Still a drone.
We haven't had you on since the drone scare, which was last.
Top out.
Yeah. That's December of 2024.
They had FAA registration lights. I'm a pilot. Any pilot knows that. You saw the footage. You could hear the engines going. They were piston engines.
Yeah.
Was there an anti-gravity drone in that mix? Maybe. But, the whole thing is plausible deniability times 1,000.
What were they doing with that? Were they building up data points for the Sky event and the UFO threat aspect?
I don't know, maybe. But I'll tell you one thing for sure, because I consulted my military guys. If those drones flew over that military base and they didn't bring them down with fire, then they knew about it and they were part of it.
Bingo.
The news never covered that.
There's no way they're going to let them fly over those secret bases.
You better believe they have anti-aircraft fire big time. Those bases are heavily protected. Those drones wouldn't stand a chance. They probably would have brought them down within a mile. of the base.
Excellent point. Yeah, the whole thing,
Really
the whole
silly.
theme
The
is
press
absurd.
in on it is a stinker.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When you see that process now, and it started at Langley, supposedly, and moved its way up the eastern seaboard, when you see that happening in Europe, happening in Belgium, in the UK, Denmark, closing down airports, drone emergencies, what is it that's behind this effort?
Well, Europe's a different kettle of fish. No pun intended, but it was a good one. No, those could be Russian, those could be Ukrainian. Remember, Ukraine wants more support, so sometimes they're going to. Logic dictates that Zelensky would send drones over some European cities to get them light a fire under their butts.
I see. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Or they could be United States or whatever, whoever's agenda is to get Europe to rearm, which I know the United States, Europe should rearm, sadly. I'm sorry, you need to do that. United States will never let NATO down. Come on. Never. Trump and everybody, they wanted to get people up to speed. Finland, Sweden, and Poland already are. They have very capable militaries. But come on, troops, trenches, military vehicles, tanks, they're still useful in certain situations.
Yes.
On a modern battlefield, I mean, the footage speaks for itself. I mean, they were blowing up Russian tanks right and left.
Incredible.
And the cages help, the turtle cages and things like that. But we're still rolling tanks off the line. The German Leopard tanks are rolling off with incredible optics, and it's like World War II all over again. We got incredible Zeiss optics and all these electronics and everything. Well, a drone the most vulnerable thing on a tank is all of its lenses and optics and sensors. Boom, 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 boom. $1,000 worth of drones, and all of a sudden the tank's blind.
This is a rollout of the new warfare.
Yeah, I mean, come on. When the Hellfire missile came out in the 90s, tanks were pushed to the second tier. I mean, this is crazy. World War III, if it happens, it's not going to be anything like people think it is. It's going to be asymmetrical. It's going to have cities will just catch fire or crumble to the ground with frequency weapons. Gray zone warfare will be upped to being hot and open sourced. Cables will be cut. Internet will be cut. We'll be down to. I just got Starlink. We're watching it on Starlink here.
Oh wow!
I'm in rural Virginia, so near the Blue Ridge. So I have to have Starlink. You're going to be down to basic services because the internet is a weapon.
Yes.
DARPANET, it was created as a communication system, but that is augmenting weapons systems by communication services. So, I mean, and you're going to have anti-gravity UAV, UFO warfare.
Right.
And so I have a friend, and she attended the recent Seoul meeting. And Jacques Vallée was master of ceremonies. And he laid down the groundwork by saying, we're all going to get a chance to talk about stuff. I want no weird questions. Only what's on the docket.
Wow.
Is what is going to be discussed. Nothing else. And so we can all imagine what they discussed when that's, various. I know Jacques Vallée discussed the radiation signatures on a UFO landing 30 years ago somewhere in the United States. Okay, that what good is that? And who cares?
Exactly.
So this is the kind of thing they're discussing.
Controlled talking points.
And it's just it's so blasé and non-important. It's incredible. They just want to keep their boring narrative going.
Right.
Is what my friend told me. And
it doesn't reveal anything, really.
Yeah, there's some discussions afterwards, and I think if you could shake hands and make friends, maybe there's some movement there. But I don't know. But this is the thing. It's like Jacques Vallée also said. He said in several interviews, there needs to be a structure. for disclosure, a firm structure. And so they built that over 8 years with everybody, Mellon, Elizondo, Avi Loeb. They continue to do it. But that firm structure they have, it's way too firm. There's no flexibility in it. They're all hiding behind their NDAs. They're all, I get an email from time to time from people, and they're like, I wish I could help, but I can't help you. Mm-hmm. I have an NDA, and they'll, they take it seriously. They'll put me in jail, and I got a family and grandkids, and I'm like, okay, I understand, but, so it's not flexible. They're getting their marching orders from someone in the national security state. We can all imagine Bobby Ray Inman's probably still in that mix.
Oh, yeah.
What is he, 110? I don't know. and there's nothing they can do because it is serious. These people, Eric Davis, Hal Puthoff, but they haven't done anything. I don't care if they've worked in black programs and they have experience with UFO technology. If you're not going to talk about it in any meaningful way, and it doesn't matter if it's in front of Congress, at the hearings, it's still documents, it's still anecdotes, it's still telling tall tales.
Yes, exactly.
Which I agree. The disclosure movement, everyone's been doing that. We all do that. It's all we have.
Mm-hmm. And,
but my idea is, and I've told several groups of people this, it's like, you need a three-pronged disclosure, a flexible disclosure initiative. Don't want to give our secrets away. You don't have to say that how this weapon system works. Just, hey, we've got a weapon that we've back engineered. But you've got to have a hardware show. I don't care where you do it. I don't care if it's in Texas. I don't care if it's at Lockheed in LA. I don't care. Call it a military arms expo. I wrote it out. Military arms expo. And have a small craft hovering, floating there, and have a black triangle, circling the area.
Mm-hmm.
Because then the stupid argument about anti-gravity is over in a second.
Right.
Number two, people can lay eyes on it. The public's invited. It's not private. The public is invited. Block off the streets. I don't care. Use the National Guard. But
exactly.
Have it public.
They're using them already to round up all the criminals anyway.
Right. And then do one on the East Coast. I don't care. Pick a military base, Andrews Air Force Base. I don't care. But have it open to the public and the press.
It's a great idea. Yeah, it's a fantastic idea.
Okay. So there's that. You don't have to say how it works. You don't have to say, well, we're using torsion fields and plasma accelerator rings. You have to just say, look, our engineers are really awesome. And they are.
Right.
It's not easy to reverse engineer stuff that's 1,000, 10,000 years ahead of you. That's damn hard. Play that up. We're not stupid. By all accounts, the human race on Earth is pretty damn clever and creative. We're good engineers. We're good, everything. So play that up. That you've got to invite the Russians, Chinese, North Koreans, everyone to the events, and also have dialogue with them in public and in private. That's ongoing, I believe, from what I've heard. It's always ongoing. But
do you think that those who are holding that wall of secrecy in place would ever allow something like that to happen?
Well, you're not going to have any kind of omelet without breaking eggs. And then there's a third thing, and there has to be a group of people in the administration, I think, some civilians, in there. You got to have the president. You got to have credibility. Here's the biggest problem for everyone: disclosure movement, the Soul Foundation, all those guys. No one really has credibility.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't have a UFO in the barn in the garage. I can't. We need to. It's not enough to tell people their laptops and smartphones and Teflon pans and fiber optics are all reverse engineered. Mm-hmm. Anecdotal stories, tall tales. The public need to be shown.
Right.
And so it's a real problem. It's like the chicken and the egg or whatever, whatever stupid analogy you want to use. But it's like you've got to bend this rule or we're not going to have anything.
This is why the whistleblowers have failed, because it's all about, well, this officer said to me that
He was inside of a craft, John.
Yeah, he saw a giant egg come out of a UFO. It's like, great, call Richard Doty. I bet the station wagon people, they abducted a station wagon.
And the egg loved him too.
Yeah.
It's not...
So I mean, that's all great. It's all part of the narrative.
Yeah.
The big narrative. Everyone's efforts, Doty's, everyone's. It's all part of it, but it's still all anecdotal.
Yeah.
You've got to have something solid and physical to show people, and you're still going to get a lot of skeptics. A lot of people Americans don't trust the government. They might think, oh, it's just AI. They're fooling us again. They've lied to it for 75 years. They're not going to show us the truth. You're still going to have to win over the public, even though you do a three-pronged, you do a press conference at the White House, but you got to have senators, congressmen, the president, the Joint Chiefs, all of them, to have any credibility whatsoever.
Yeah.
Half of America hates President Trump. Okay, fine. But, we got to have somebody in charge. And he's, knowledgeable because of his uncle, John G. Trump. So,
yes.
And Nixon, it has to be that at the least. Maybe smaller shows at other military bases. So what? I mean, the Chinese, the Russians, and the North Koreans know what we have for the most part. They've actually my God, it's all over the internet. You and I are blabbing about it. Everyone is blabbing about it. No, we're not going to lose anything there. You don't have to tell people how any of this stuff works. Let the science community, chit chat. But you've also got to, at some point, tell people, sorry, folks, the history books are pretty much all wrong. A few exceptions, but
wow. Yeah.
And, the rest of us go into the history that, it's not written in stone, but here's what, the best minds have come up with in, 1,000 books, Atlantis, ET visitation, experimentation, geology going on for millions and millions and billions of years on Earth. Come on, it's a laboratory. And, not to scare people, but the people who are going to be scared about all of this are going to be scared anyway.
Excellent point. Exactly.
Right. And so Jacques Vallée, right. So Jacques Vallée comes out and says, well, we can't disclose, because of the religious issue. So I've given that great thought. I'm not a religious person, but I understand religion and the history of it. Personally, I don't see any problem with it at all, really. Not much. You need someone to get up there and say, look, from what we've heard from ETs and people around it, there's as many spiritual systems in the universe as there are stars.
Yeah.
How can that knowledge not expand our spiritual and religious horizons?
Exactly.
All of us.
Yeah.
Every religion, every philosophy, everything. How can that not expand? And so everyone's like, religions are going to collapse. I'm like, why? We know the Vatican's ready. They've, let slip some gossip here and there. I can't speak for Islam, but I would think there are a lot of Islam clerics who have no issue with that. Indigenous peoples, no problem. I mean, in the Native American tradition, the Hopi, all the Kachina dolls are, the sky people.
Yes, exactly.
Who helped us with farming and corn planting and, doing everything. So, I mean, a lot of it
lived with that whole mentality.
Yeah.
Already. Yeah.
And people have to stop with the us and them. We are star people. We are a star nation. We are out there. I'm on board with that. I believe that for a long time. We've been out there mucking around. Some people say we don't have a good reputation. Well, we don't have a good reputation down here either.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
It's the Roman Empire. We've had all these empires. Oh, in fact, I'm joining the Roman army.
Oh, let me see this.
Fire.
Yeah.
So I've got a local Roman army troop, and I'm gonna be a signifier.
This is literally the greatest.
John, I'm going to switch gears here and ask you a few questions about your forthcoming book on Antarctica. Now, you've gone deep on the X technology, and in part one, we discussed Paul Milling telling you about a German saucer. When did you figure out the secret Antarctica research?
The 80s, I think it was public that the Germans had a base in Antarctica, but it was just played down like it still is. Right. Oh, it's just scientific. 300 missing U-boats, Antarctic settlement women in the pale blue uniforms. Oh yeah, it was just it was just a scientific. Actually, it was scientific, but come on.
Incredible. And this is what your fourth book is about.
Antarctica should be part of disclosure, hands down.
Yes.
All of it. And once you pull that icy string, it's all going to unravel.
Wow.
That's the other thing. I mean, it's like I told you at the beginning, we don't have to do anything. Mm-hmm. Really. You can sit back, pop popcorn, drink a beer. Sit back, enjoy the show, because they're just crumbling. They're feeding upon themselves. Mellon, Elizondo thing, Rubio thing. It's not going to work. The American public, the human race, is just so curious. And we want to know where we came from. We want to know what's out there. We want to know what technology is here with us. We want to know who we've been doing trade and deals with. It's going to become too fascinating for them to contain it. Mm-hmm. And it really isn't contained. I mean, disclosure has been going on since the 50s. It's just so few people believe in it still. There's more now, but there's more people on Earth now. So the ratio is probably the same. I don't know. There's no way to. How do you count? Greer says, there's 10 million people in the disclosure movement. Really? You went out and personally counted them? There's no way to really know. And everyone's at a different level.
Yeah.
It's like the people on Twitter, they said, oh, we love it when you go on Daniel's show, but I don't believe a word of it. But it was really great. It was really great and entertaining, but I don't believe it.
Wow.
I mean, why do you watch it? Why do you, we're only trying to help. All of us.
Excellent question.
Nobody's making money. Everyone's like, oh, everyone's making money in the UFO field. No. Greer's gotten money from people, but he's actually spent it on good things. He's not getting paid. This whole thing is a grassroots project by everyone around the world, disclosure folks.
It is. Yeah.
Yes, Hollywood's making money on it. Spielberg's making money, and maybe the Soul Foundation's making money on it. Let them. Mm-hmm. Let them. Because money, you could throw billions at this. Billions won't change people's minds. Right. They won't change their paradigms. You need the component of transparency and truth and honesty and everything that goes along with that. You need, those are things that money can't buy.
Exactly.
It's like, I don't care what their budget is. Somebody told me, that they have access to all the money they want. So what? Mm-hmm. Yes, the disclosure movement could use, a little more grassroots money here and there, but it's not going to, you could throwing money at this problem. It really isn't going to solve anything. Mm-hmm. It's about personal exchange. You and I are doing this from the goodness of our hearts because we believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't. Mellon's always like, "You're riding my coattails. You want to be famous?" And I'm like,
"Wow,
where am I riding your coattails to?
Wow.
Hell and hell and back." There's nobody in the disclosure movement is really famous. Dr. Greer's, nobody knows outside the community. Everyone knows the people that go to Contact in the Desert and MUFON and, the personalities. I don't want to go to those shows. I don't want to be a personality and sign. I don't want to do that.
You want Chris Mellon's fame, admit it.
No, I don't even care about Chris Mellon anymore.
I mean, what's amazing is that they even put him forward in that Age of Disclosure because he's one of the most uninspiring speakers on planet Earth.
That's what I'm saying. The boredom is going to kill them.
Wow.
Because let me see if I can put this in words. When you do something in life, give back to the world, do something pro bono, whatever, whatever you do something, the honesty and your heartfelt emotions come through clearly.
Right.
And with those guys, they get up there. I'm Hal Puthoff, and I saw something. You better believe me.
Oh yeah.
That, I'm Chris Mellon, and gosh, we better get to the bottom of this, and you better believe me. Their dishonesty comes through.
Wow, excellent point.
Like my wife's friend watched one of their films. Have you ever seen The Program? I didn't even know it existed.
Oh my God, yes.
Documentary on Netflix or something. Lee Keen gets up there and says, well, the human race can't handle the truth, and she says, are all these people like ex-government CIA? And we're like, yeah. My wife and I are like that. She goes, they're so boring and dull and
wow,
in your face and arrogant. And I said, yeah. So boring, in your face and arrogance, that's not a good show.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put on a show like Mickey Rooney, and Liza Minnelli, come on kids, we'll all put on a show, for save the school or the church or whatever, something good. It's boring, and boring reflects their state of mind, which is,
wow,
we're only going to tell you this much. You don't deserve the rest. Your children, you don't deserve the truth. We know, we're the shepherds. We'll lead you the flock of sheep. We'll lead you. The arrogance, the dishonesty, the NDAs, all that stuff. It gives them an amalgam that's just doesn't taste very good.
Wow,
it's
incredible. Yeah,
if it's a school play, they're putting on a school play, but everyone's
excellent point.
Very few people stay and watch. It's just, and that's what in life you can only do so much skullduggery and fakery and disinformation and everything. It starts to come through.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care if Elizondo gets up there and cries, and part of him probably is genuine. He wants the truth out, but the rest of the people, they got the screws on him. Because he's just, he's lower down on the totem pole. And he probably does have some good intentions, but it comes through that they're like, well, I can't talk about that, but let me tell you about the bubblegum machine that we've invented for, UFOs. Yeah. When they talk about nothing and they're like adults, boring adults, conservative, boring adults, telling their children, no, you don't deserve to know. This is for grown-ups only. Remember when you were a kid, how demeaning that was? This is for grown-ups because I said so. You're going to believe what I tell you to believe because I said so.
All right. This reveals who they are. Yeah.
Right. In my case, my dad lied to me, but he's a politician. And so as the growing process is all about learning.
He told you what he could,
parents,
right?
Yeah, the paranoid, the parents, they got wrong. God, lighten up a little bit, And it's helpful that you and I and Farrell and probably Catherine Fist, we have good senses of humor.
Oh yeah.
And I understand that's, not everyone has that. That's okay. I'm working on Eric Hecker.
You gotta cultivate it. Yeah.
He's great in private. He's funny as hell. But
yeah. I had a great time. I had a great time interviewing him.
He's full of shit. Don't listen to Eric Hecker. Listen to me. No, he's really funny. We get along really well, and we had a great time in DC together. He has a great girlfriend, Holly, and we wonderful time. It's getting to know people like that. Everything worthwhile in life is really, really hard. Emotionally, physically, everything. It's hard. Lessons are hard to learn. That's why they call them hard lessons.
Yes.
Those of us have been through life 63 years. I've been through divorce. I've been beat up. Almost died a million times. You learn these hard lessons. God, I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that? Because you needed to learn.
Incredible.
But getting officials up there going, just listen to us because we're officials. That's another definition of insanity.
That's really true.
The boring adults getting the kids together, the naughty kids, the gutter kids. Sit down and listen. Because we said so. And you're like, when an adult told me that as a kid, and they're like, "You listen to me because I said so." I was just like, to hell with this. I'm going to go light firecrackers.
It's the rebel gene, right?
You got to have that rebel gene. I think that people, and I think the disclosure movement is made up of a growing number of people with that gene.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
we don't want to strangle the public and say, listen to us. It's just like, we're going to talk about the subject. If you're interested, that's great. If you're not, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not like we have all the answers and we're always right. We're wrong a lot. I mean, it's just the law of averages, but we're really trying not to be.
Yes.
And the truth, that when you speak the truth, even if you get something wrong, oh, that flying saucer came from Venus, not Pluto. Oh, sorry. Even if you get something wrong, because you're trying to tell something truthful and benevolent and beneficial for everyone, I think that comes through. But
your books have brought forward a lot of these deep ideas, exotic technology, the Nazi programs, and you included John G. Trump in your last one. So now we're all looking forward to the new one that's coming up. John, how can people get in touch with you these days?
Just my website. It's John W. Warner IV author.com.
Yes, fantastic. And when do you suspect the fourth book is going to be out?
I don't know. I'm almost done. Well, 3/4 away done, and then I got 6 months. I got to admit, I've been lazy and I'm doing other stuff.
It's just great to know that you're working.
Darn that World War III. Cutting into my writing time. Seriously.
Well, all the things that you're doing, think tanks and other things, very important.
Well, a lot of it's a bit of a downer. I mean, a lot of it just is depressing.
I can imagine.
When I'm down and depressed, I don't write well. I got
interesting.
A little bit more.
Oh yeah.
It's hard. I mean, I have depression anyway, but it's just, some weeks I'm just deflated, and I can
appreciate it.
Shit. I mean, are we doomed?
It's just good. It's good to have your voice back on all this. I can tell you that. My question for you, last question for this interview, is looking out to 2026. You've talked about World War III. You've talked about the UFO file. You've talked about the cover-up. You've talked about Age of Disclosure and the shenanigans of these groups. What do you see coming forward in 2026 in relation to all of those subjects?
I don't know. Predictions are haphazard. They're hazardous anyway. They never seem to really gel. But I think, generally speaking, there's more interest in disclosure.
Yes.
With people that were heretofore not interested in it, and all of a sudden really are, because they're like, what would stop Xi Putin and Kim Jong-il and all the other bad actors? And I'm like, a massive dose of reality.
Whoa. Yeah.
Something to take people's minds out of the gutter, so to speak. The news is just full of crap. Every YouTube is just, Ireland is dead. Ireland is smoking in fire. I mean, it's all nonsense, and they don't give you accurate anything, and so people are confused. I hope the war in Ukraine stops, like everyone else, but I think going forward, 2027, Xi says he's going to invade Taiwan. I mean, he just told us.
Wow.
He says, I'm going to do it. Are you really going to stop me and start World War III? I mean, maybe, maybe not. I mean, it's the kind of thing where, but I do think in the amalgam of conflict, in chaos, there is the crucible of change. It's the way the cosmos works. You're not going to get a planet that's not come out of a primordial heat cycle of something. Stars, birth of other stars, nebulas, and everything. I mean, in order for us to have clarity, disclosure on a variety of topics, our history, anthropology, everything, the crucible of conflict and war might create an unstable state of being where that can suddenly be possible.
Right.
And I don't really know exactly how that would look or come about, but it wouldn't hurt if the administration would come forth with a hardware show and a press conference and some diplomatic work, but those are just ideas on the drawing board. They're not very popular, but they're ideas. I hope so. My general feeling as a spiritual person, and I think a lot of ET star nations have a tremendous amount of investment in this planet and us.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll probably do everything they can and maybe a little bit more to prevent us from totally destroying ourselves. So I'm not worried that the Earth is going to crack in half and everyone's going to die. And I don't know. That'll be the end of Earth. I think you've got a lot of players. Some of them are regressive, but most of them are positive, I think, I presume. They've got a lot of invested in planet Earth. It's a beautiful garden planet. Yes, we're a pain in the ass. Yes, we burn oil and fuel. We're a mania. But those things can be corrected in a matter of a scant few years with technology. Oh, yeah,
Excellent
nuclear
point.
war, that can all be fixed and reversed and cleaned up. The technology exists. And so I'm not really worried about that. But that sort of horrible period of, that everyone talks about and the Mayans talk about and everything, there's going to be a reckoning of everything and everyone. And we're all going to go through some painful lessons. No pain, no gain. So I'm, bring it on. I want things to change because they can't keep going the way they have been. We can't keep poisoning the Earth. We can't keep lying to everyone. We can't treat 95% of the public like 5-year-old children. You can't do that anymore. You can't have an elite with technology that's 10,000 years ahead of. It's an imbalance, and an imbalanced machine will explode.
Right.
People say, "Oh, the engine just blew up." Gee, I wonder why. It's not going to work for long. And I think people know that on all sides. Remember, we're dealing with a lot of factions of people. And they're beginning to realize that. They're like, well, I don't like all these people, but maybe they have a point. There's going to be a lot of hands clasping under the table. Don't have to like each other, but we all got to kind of cooperate. We're all in this together. I mean, people at meetings, they think, oh, well, I just want to do my thing. No. You live on this miserable planet with the rest of us. And they
Right.
think for a minute and they're like, oh, wow, I really do. I mean,
Wow. That is really true.
I have $1 trillion company and I want to make weapons. And it's like, well, you're creating your own knife to stab yourself in a sense.
Exactly.
We need weapons, we need defense, but, we also need wisdom. The only way to get this wisdom that we desperately need is for the Earth to grow up, evolve rather quickly.
Wow.
Because we don't have the luxury of time. Like that whole Jacques Vallée, Mellon, Elizondo thing, they've stated, we want a very structured disclosure over a long period of time. That's great in a perfect world. Guess what? We don't live in a perfect world.
Yeah.
Very dangerous, unstable world. They remind me of like my dad when he would answer a question like he was still living in 1955.
Wow.
I'm like, Dad, this is 2005. No, you can just put a carburetor on it and it'll run. Really? On a computer? Okay. They seem to be very old-fashioned.
Wow.
Old thinking, old-fashioned, conservative, hampered by NDAs and just not, everything. They're tied and their hands are handcuffed. And frankly, a lot of them seem like limited thinkers. Yes,
No
you can be a
question.
good scientist and, I'm a ufologist. Well, what have you done for ufology, Mr. Vallée? Not much.
Right.
Everyone says, oh, his radiation work is great. Okay, thank you for the radiation, figures. How's that going to help? It's impractical stuff. They concentrate on impractical, non-important topics. Oh, we have to get a UFO tracking organization. Well, what's ARROW? What's OSAP? What's, that list of acronyms? You can post that up there that I wrote. I mean, that's only a partial list. There's so many departments, playing paper football and goofing around. And, ARROW will do it. And it's just the old runaround. And it's like, we're stabbing ourselves. We're all stabbing ourselves. Everyone thinks, oh, my group of elites will rule the world. And it's like, well, you could do that in the old days, but not today.
Right.
Thank you for joining us for this special presentation, and the conversation continues at darkjournalist.com with full member versions of these deep interviews. The link is in the description of this video. Please join us Friday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern for the Dark Journalist X series, and stop the op. See you soon.
It lines up exactly with something that we shot very recently. So I'm excited about what we can reveal here tonight.
Let's give the people what they want.
Exactly.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. First question. I'm excited. Let's begin.